after some thought, I've decided to do a series on tracking. Again, it's going to mostly pertain to people, but I would say 90% of all these techniques and what I'm about to go over with you guys can also be applied to animals, and I'll try to do my best throughout this video series to explain where they apply and how and whatnot. So just to go over real quick some of the things that we're going to cover. On the people side of it, a lot of this is used in search and rescue teams. The course that I took part in was actually a combat tracking team, so some of this information, for obvious reasons, I'm going to have to leave out. We'll touch on some terminology and what things mean as far as what tracking teams use for their terms. We'll cover basic tracking techniques, and you see me looking off, I have it written down here so I don't miss anything on you guys. Visual tracking indicators, so things that you're going to be looking for. Dynamics of a footprint, which I've already gone over in my last video. We'll go more in depth now that I'm going to do this whole series, and it's going to be some classroom type stuff like this, on the whiteboard, and some outside stuff to actually show you what some of these things look like. The rules of tracking is absolutely key, so we'll touch on that when we get to it. Assessing the age of spoor and sign. We'll touch on spoor and the terminology, but just real quick, spoor is just another term for tracks or sign. You can replace any one of them words when we're talking about it. But spoor is, if I'm not mistaken, it's a Dutch word. It was used by a Dutch tracker that kind of came up with the system. And so spoor pretty much just means tracks. Individual roles in a tracking team. We'll touch on that. We'll touch on some of the different tracking formations. But again, a lot of that stuff I'm going to have to leave out, for obvious reasons. So, the missions of the tracking team, obviously, is to find, whatever person or persons that's being followed or tracked, be it they're missing, a fugitive, whatever the case may be. And again, some of that will be left out. So the formations, lost spoor procedures. So all that entails is you're on a track line, you're following tracks, and then you come to a spot where you just totally lose it and you can't see any more tracks. So we'll cover some procedures on how to go about getting back on track or getting back on spoor, so you'll be able to pick it back up and continue on your track line. Conducting the follow-up, all that means is something obviously has to take place for there to be a tracking team out there. Again, be it a police, law enforcement, military, or search and rescue team. Something had to have taken place for this team to get called out. So the follow-up is simply just starting to pursue the track line. Immediate action drills, that pertains to the Army, so we're not going to cover that. Anti-tracking techniques, again, I've covered that just quick on my last video. Hopefully I'll be able to show you guys a little bit more on that. Tracking and surveillance, we'll go over that. Urban tracking and night tracking. So, as I said before in my last video, there's a lot that encompasses tracking, especially when it comes to people. So all them things I just talked about, we're going to cover throughout this series. And, hopefully I can put it out there in a way that you guys can understand it through videos. So, and again, all this stuff I'll be teaching, a good majority of it anyway, at my winter skills class here in a couple weeks. So again, if you're attending that, I think you'll get a lot out of this and it'll help you out. Let's go over some of the terminology that's used. And again, I'm just going to read right off my paper here so I don't miss anything. And give you guys these definitions, you know, verbatim of what they are. So, the tracking team, first of all, obviously is a team of people that are trained and organized to follow tracks and signs. Pretty self-explanatory. You also have support teams for all these, you know, different elements. Again, be it police, military, search and rescue, they always have support teams that can, you know, fill in where need be. You have a command structure set up that control the whole operation. So covered those. Follow-up, again, I just touched on that. All it means is to follow a set of tracks, so it's pretty easy. Quarry is defined, it's just an alternative word to, you know, fugitive, the target, the pursued, stuff like that. It used to be, you know, yeah, it's a suspect, but if you're out there searching for a missing person, they're not necessarily a suspect, you know, they're just a missing person. So they've changed that word to quarry, and it covers, you know, all those individuals respectively. Alright, time and distance gap. Hopefully we'll go into that in great detail. The book definition on that is theoretical distance which quarry could move over the ground between the time of the incident and the time on which the tracker or the tracking team arrived to commence the follow-up. So from the time something happened to the time you get there to set out on this track line, that's the time distance gap, or the head start that quarry has over you. And we'll talk as we go along on how to cut that time distance gap down as well. So spoor, I've already touched on that, but it's interchangeable with the words tracks, footprints, or sign. It all means the same thing. Natural state is the ground or any type of medium that's unaffected by tracks or sign. So just the natural state of the ground as it would be if nothing disturbed it at all. A track line is a continuous line of observable clues or indicators visible to the tracker, indicating the path of the quarry that's being followed. So that was track line. Contamination, tracks or other disturbances made by anyone or anything other than the quarry itself or themselves that obscures or obliterates the quarry spoor. So that's, if you're following a track, an animal could come by, go right over the same tracks of the quarry, or anything like that that's contaminating them footprints or that spoor that you're trying to follow. Next we have an active track. That's a follow-up, following a set of tracks while the quarry is still on the move. So you're on a track line that someone else is on the other end of it, and it's ongoing at that time. A passive track is a follow-up, following a set of tracks when the tracks are cold, normally used for intelligence gathering purposes or to look for base campsites and other evidence of, you know, whatever it is that you are tracking. Alright, to pursue is to establish or re-establish contact with the quarry in order to, you know, catch them or rescue them. Again, all dependent on the situation and what type of team is out there tracking. Follow is to follow the quarry in a clandestine manner in order to seek information to his or her activities, contacts, and routes. Conclusive evidence is tracks or evidence left on the ground that are indisputably left by the quarry. So beyond of a shadow of a doubt, you know, hey, these tracks were left by the person that we're looking for. Substantiating evidence is evidence left on the ground which is inconclusive in itself, but taken into account with other evidence, is considered as likely to have been left by the quarry. So you could be following a set of tracks, you know, and the person goes through, you know, a thicket or whatever, and not really a good medium to show up their footprints anymore, but you can see maybe branches broken and stuff like that, so you know you're still on the right track. But you always want to confirm that with ground spoor, which is obviously a footprint or something of that sort. Initial commencement point is just your start point of wherever you first pick up, you know, an incident happened, or the first place, in other words, that you pick up this track line. Spoor separation point is a point on the ground where the fugitive group, or whatever it is, again, you're looking for, the quarry, splits up into more than one distinct group. That's if you're following multiple people. Again, that would be in probably a police matter or something like that. It could be a rescue one as well. I mean, you got a few people out there and they decide to split up to try and look for help. You'd run into that situation as well. Action indicators is foot or body marks left on the ground, such as a person sitting down to change his shoes, indicating that a certain identifiable action has taken place. So action indicators, we'll go over those. Lost spoor procedures is a sequential set of procedures set to relocate the spoor. I already touched on that a little bit. A track trap, it's an area of the ground such like a sandy road, a dust patch, moist ground that leaves distinctive footprint evidence of human passage. So, you know, like beach sand, snow, as I showed you in my last video. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. That type of median leaves a distinct print, you know, if you're walking over it. So that's a track trap. 360 is a systematical search around in a circle in an attempt to locate lost tracks. That's going with, obviously, lost spoor procedures. They have a box search. There's a planned and systematic search for tracks using natural lines, linear features which surround the area. So you may, hey, from this set of train tracks to this creek bed, and, you know, so on and so forth. Hey, from the edge of the lake here this way. That would be a box search. Alright, so talked a little bit about the basics, some of the things that we're going to talk about throughout this series. We just went over some of the terminology and the definitions for them. So after that, we're going to get into basic tracking techniques,